Welcome to Writer Syndrome, podcast about writing from start to finish. This episode, we're talking about writing action scenes.
Yeah, man.
It's fun stuff, I think.
Should be a fun one.
Yeah, I think so. Joining me as always, Tim, Letney. We've both written a lot of action. We've both seen a lot of action.
I got to tell you, buddy, you're not sounding real inspired this morning.
It's been a while since we've done this. We had to move some things around. So I think we're both trying to get our heads back into it.
Yeah, and you're still, like, if we're being transparent, like, you're still in the thralls of finishing up your book.
I am.
A lot.
I am. I'm mentally trying to get back into it just to make some potentially final tweaks that I'm fighting with if they're worth it. I'm 50-50 on them.
Yeah. I
think they're good ideas, but I think, as you mentioned just 2 minutes ago, you're like, yeah, but are you just pushing sand around the the beach kind of thing?
I mean, it doesn't feel like procrastination to me, honestly. It feels like striving for perfection or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
or
which
like
we know you can't get, right?
Yeah.
But none of them are about writing action. Most of it's just
No.
So most of it's just adding some, I think, color and detail to some characters and some scenes, which I think would be good. But book is being moved to end of this month.
When I started writing, and I've written a bunch of stuff, but like nothing as structured and long as this current book. I'd never written action scenes before. Have you? Like, and also, like, was this your first time kind of dealing with that or that type of scene?
The screenplays, short screenplays. I've written like a handful of those. And there was like one I wrote where I did some action in there. But that's a different animal, right? You're kind of keeping it real lean and kind of tight, which, I mean, I guess you should kind of in your novel too, but it's different. Yeah, no, this is the first time I've ever really tackled, I guess, like the action set pieces, you know, like those kind of moments are like kind of big and like you got to pay attention to your whole environment. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is my first time doing that.
I'd written like moments that had like dramatic moments or like punctuations of violence, but never having to keep track of people moving in a space quickly, you know, and making sure that it's clear and not confused. And it was, I have no idea if I did it right, honestly. Like, I don't know. But it was really fun to write. I remember I was texting you. I was like, I think this is the first kind of action scene I've ever written. Yeah. And what was your experience with him, Russ? How do you feel about yours?
I would say first draft, I was like, this is boring. And then subsequent drafts, it got better. I think what helped, two things. One was a tip. You sent me this video because after you read the second draft or third, whatever it was I sent you, they have like this big kind of action scene at the end that kind of culminates and, you know, takes place at the National Gallery of Art, whatever, in DC. Mm-hmm. I kind of wrote it based on like some quick images I had found, and I was just kind of moving characters through it. And you sent me a video you found on YouTube of this guy who just did like a complete walkthrough of the entire museum. That helped so much because I couldn't go down to DC at the time of writing it, and watching that. I watched the entire thing. Guy walked around the entire museum filming it for an hour and a half. Just filming everything. I was like, thank you. But it was super helpful because then it's like thinking about a scene, like an action scene. And it's like, okay, what are the most important things I need to think about, right? One, the space that you're in, and where is everything? Where are all the characters, and where does everyone need to end up? And again, it's like you have your own beats, you have your own story beats within the action scene, right? Where you have your opening of like getting everyone into the spot, that's kind of the middling, and then the climax at the end. So that was my experience. It was very stale to start, but watching that video you sent kind of helped spark some ideas like, oh, they can go down the stairs, and I can have like, there's two guys in there, they're like chasing blah, blah, blah. And like, where am I going to hide them? And where are they kind of sneaking around? And also thinking of the mood. I love that the 1970s espionage thrillers like the Robert Redford flicks and stuff like that, where it's kind of like this hushed kind of chasing people. And that's kind of the feel I wanted until it like came to a point. Yeah. So trying to capture, I was like, oh, an art gallery, that's a great spot for this to kind of unfold and this kind of build that tension with the silence, which you called out too. And you're like, yeah, have them maybe call out some like the artwork and stuff in the place, and like maybe I can add to like what they're thinking. And I did that. And it's like, oh, this is so much more dynamic of a scene now. So
yeah, it's interesting. Like, what a delicate balance, right? Because I realized, I mean, it probably comes from being influenced by film, right? Yeah. But when I'm writing these like little action scenes, my characters aren't in their heads at all. You know, everything's very in the moment, very active. There's not many thoughts. And I can say, like, from one of the books I'm reading now on the side, it's very cerebral. And even when action's happening, so it doesn't feel urgent. So it doesn't feel exciting. Yep. And that might be what the author is going for. I very much wanted this kind of maybe Bourne, Batman Begins-esque kind of like excitement, like frenetic action of what's happening.
Yep.
Which, also needs to mesh with the characters because they can't all of a sudden be like kung fu experts or something like Neo in the Matrix, right? But I'll say that for my action beats, and you're not going to be surprised by this, not beats, but my action scenes, they weren't wildly planned. They were planned that action happens.
Yep.
But once I kind of got in there, I pantsed it. I pantsed kind of like, and I wanted it to be kind of like the scruffy or sloppiness of a fight, and people who aren't good at fighting. So,
did you use your kids to mock any scenes?
Well, it's so weird. And I think I texted you this, like, I don't know, we're going back a year now. But with that first time that I kind of wrote like a bit of a confrontation between one of my mains and some antagonists, I was standing in my kitchen. Like, if I move my right hand, and they duck, and then I go on my left hand, then as I'm writing it, I'm like, well, nobody cares right hand, left hand. Like, that's too much detail.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you want to give the reader something to picture, but you don't want to limit them. Like, I think I was providing too much detail, and it made it not fun to read, probably confusing to read.
Yeah.
It's like, well, he's got a knife in his right hand and his left hand's holding the bag. So then you jump forward a scene. It's like, well, where'd the bag go? And like, I was kind of writing myself into a corner by being way too specific. Because I always had my characters holding a thing.
Yep.
It was really interesting to write around, and then introducing these inconsistencies of like right hand versus left hand, or where are they facing now?
Yeah.
They were facing the door, but now they're facing the wall, and just trying to like not only imagine the space for yourself, but then using really succinct, direct words to make sure the reader understands what you're trying to get across. And once again, I have no idea if I did it right. At the end, I made them very, like, my sentences are short during action, because I think that's kind of what I wanted. These like little short, easy to read, fast punches of like kind of what's happening.
Yep.
As opposed to kind of like long-winded things. But I mean, everybody's mileage may vary.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know if I'm doing it right. That's what felt right for me.
I would say, going back to like the spatial awareness again, I think that's like one of the first things I thought about. I was like, okay, where is it? Well, second time after I wrote it, the first time I was like, this is terrible. But distance also, like how far someone is from maybe where the action is happening, or where you want them to go, where you know what I mean? Like where things are unfold. Realizing that you kind of have to give the reader that sense too, but you can do that through like similes or some type of like description. I was like, there was one, I guess you call it an action scene, where my character discovers like a dead body in like a park or something. I was trying to build tension by the distance they were away. And I was like, I think the first pass, I was like, I wrote something like, and he could see the person he's looking for is like X number, like 100 feet away. And I was like, how far is 100 feet actually away? Is that too far? Would you like?
Yeah.
So I literally went into the living room, got a tape measure. I'm like, okay, let me shorten this up, or like, let me make this tight. Like the points where he's going to start recognizing something is wrong. And that was the idea, is like, as he's getting closer, he's supposed to feel like, oh, something's off. Right. And you would, as someone who's going to meet someone, and if they're dead or something or whatever, you physically will get like a sense of something is off. And I was like, at what point would he start feeling that? And can I do any other motion in the scene as he's moving to like close that gap, where it's not me just being like, he was 10 feet away, he was 5 feet, like
5, 4, 3.
Yeah.
Oh
like
no.
He's I got to run now. So I think it's kind of interesting to build tension through distance too, and having other things happen along the side as this character is like closing in on whatever that dread is. And then maybe like he's in a park. So like maybe there's someone running with a dog, the first time he sees, and then like a couple seconds later, that one's passed, right? And that kind of give you a sense of maybe like there's life happening on the sides. But I mean, you mentioned you had like kind of two different scale actions scenes, big scale, small scale. Was there one you preferred writing over the other?
What inspired me in this piece was the large scales. Yeah. Like it was like the impetus. It'll start small, kind of expand and contract and expand and contract.
Yeah.
But I'll say going through the writing process, it was the claustrophobic scenes and the small scale intimate scenes that I think I enjoyed more.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because they're simpler to write. There's less. I would talk all the time about how I think writing and reading, it's like a collaborative effort between the author and the reader. Yeah. And I think for these moments of scale, I'm asking a lot of the reader. because I can't put in the detail I'm picturing, or it would be an absolute slog to read.
Yeah.
But the intimate scenes and the scenes that are in the dark and that are claustrophobic, I feel like that's a very natural fit for the writer-reader relationship. Just the nature of imagining things. It's almost like you're shining a flashlight already around your story and like what to focus on.
Yep.
So that seemed more synchronicitous, or just much more of like a mutual relationship. But when I think about my book, I personally love the big scenes.
Mm-hmm.
But what I got from beta readers was that they were like, this is a little too big. This is a bit too grand. And I was like, well, that's too bad, because it's staying.
Because that's what I wanted to read. I already know this about you, but did you, I know you were kind of using film as kind of your benchmark.
I can't help it, for better and worse.
Did you have any authors or anyone you had read, you're like, oh, I kind of like the way they're writing this, or you just kind of stuck with like more film? Like,
I love the dread aspect. Like there's this one scene, I think it's in The Stand.
Yeah.
It's not even action. It's just this claustrophobic scene of one of the main characters going under the Lincoln Tunnel during like an apocalypse.
Yeah, that was The Stand.
And it's one of the best scenes in The Stand.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of action scenes in The Stand, really. And that scene is just a standout.
It's the doom
scene. So like I was very much, I was very inspired by that. I'd read Colson Whitehead's Zone 1. He's just absolute phenomenal author. I think it's his first and probably only foray into like a Stephen King homage of horror. He's like actually a literary fiction author. He's crazy talented.
Yeah.
He writes also intimate, but also large scale at the end. I felt that was like, I couldn't picture what he was writing.
Yeah.
But yet when it comes to like something like Max Brooks's World War Z, sometimes that scale came across to me. So I think maybe World War Z is kind of a bit of, and Robopocalypse for that matter, kind of an inspiration for like large scale action. But really like my main impetus, and one of my impetuses for writing what I wrote, was that low budget zombie movies and low budget horror movies, when they end, they often end on like the promise of a bigger world. And it's a promise that budgetarily movies can't hit. It's like, oh, this small outbreak that happened in a house is over. And then they're like, oh, but now this city, like what's happening there? And then if they ever do follow up on that, it never delivers on that promise of that scale, that massive scale of, like disaster movie meets horror movie.
Yeah.
And I always want to see it because I think it's what they tee up, and it's kind of what gets you excited and maybe even gets you to the sequel. And then you're just depressed that it's just a bunch of people running around abandoned buildings. It just doesn't have it. So, but then once again, like World War Z kind of sort of, even the movie, it does try to capture that giant scale of creature feature plus disaster movie. And I had myself kind of watching some like documentary handheld footage of like earthquakes and, tsunamis, and just to kind of see what's happening, to understand during those moments, what's happening to the buildings and what's happening to the cars and what way are they turning and what direction are the people running. And so I was really inspired a little bit by like true life documentary footage that inspired some later parts of my book.
Yeah.
How about you? I mean, you said like espionage films. What about books? Anything that kind of rose to the surface for you that inspired the way that you tackle action?
I wanted to kind of stick with that, that espionage thriller kind of vibe. Robert Ludlum, like the, Bourne series stuff, I think kind of fits in there. Aspects of Tom Clancy stuff, although he gets almost too detailed with things where it's like, this isn't moving for me. But I know it's like not in my genre, but I just like the adventure feel of like Ready Player One, or like that kind of movement, which I think that's got some really good action to it, but it's written in kind of like this really fun way. So I was kind of trying to mash that up in my head, but definitely leaning, I could like picture these scenes in my head. So I think I was playing it as a movie. And then I was also thinking about like, how violent do I get in describing some of these things, right? Because it's like, I think at the time I had read The Stand, and that was just more of just feeling of dread. And I was reading, I'd read some Cormac McCarthy or whatever at the time. I was like, that's just over the top violent. I'm not going that far. And that's obviously out of genre. And then reading, stuff that's in my genre, it seems like some kind of bounce back and forth between like really describing the violence and blood and stuff.
Yeah,
like
can
this.
I ask a question? So like when you describe like, oh, that's too violent, are you referring to not just like the punching and the kicking and the shooting, but the repercussions of the gore aspect of it? So it's like how okay.
Yeah, like I'll tell you right now,
how gory.
Like I just finished like me reading like Michael Crichton's like Timeline book, and there is some kind of gory scenes, and I wasn't expecting it to be that like descriptive and bloody. I mean, they're not over the top, but for everything else you built up to, it was like, oh, okay. And I've also heard the Jurassic Park book is actually a little more violent and descriptive than the movie.
Yeah.
I think I wanted a balance of like, I wasn't going to sit there and be like, people do get stabbed. There is blood. And I do describe that, but I don't get to the point of like spending too much time on the gore because I don't think that's what's important.
You're not like glorifying it. You're not like,
no,
and that's not what you're going for.
No. And if the only things I could think, the only one particular scene that stands out to me is, as I was describing before, my main character finds another character dead. And the only reason why I get into describing like this scene is because it's from the character's POV, and I want them to feel that visceral kind of like dread and like, I've never seen a dead body before, like most people haven't, most people shouldn't, and it's just like, well, how would you feel? How would you react?
That's a great point. Like rooting it in the character's experience,
right?
As opposed to glorifying it for its own sake,
right?
I think that's a really great approach, Russ.
Whereas like, I have 2 or 3 other characters. Like I have my FBI character, right? Where if he goes and kills someone, it's not gonna be over the top description because it might be something he's done before. He was in the military. He's seen death, like seeing some blood, or if he shoots someone in the head or whatever, brain bit. Like that's not gonna register with him. He's just gonna register that enemy is down, right? And that's the focus for that character. Like I don't need to get into all those details, and I don't need to do it for shock value for the reader either. Like
I wonder if that falls into like genre expectations. Like
just gonna bring that up. I don't. I
don't know who would expect that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like from a thriller aspect, I mean, again, I always come back to the Clancy's, the Ludlums, and stuff like this, and even the films. Like there is violence, there is blood to them, but I mean, the ones that are like the espionage thrillers, it's typically not over the top. It's not it's not glorified anyway because it doesn't really impact. It's not important to the story. The impact of the story is that person is dead. And then the characters around that's reaction, right? That's more important than head was chopped off and there's blood everywhere. Unless maybe it's like a noir, but
Yeah, I feel like something. I mean, it's not just there's some action movies, right, that I've watched over the years, like some of the later Rambos and maybe some of the John Wicks, and the main character almost becomes like a Jason Voorhees of sorts because there's this glorification of the violence they're doing because of the squibs and whatever, like people's arms are getting cut off and stuff. And it's almost like it'd be comic if it wasn't so like gory and mean. It's interesting to hear that, you said it's Clancy or Crichton?
Crichton was pretty, like at least this one book, Timeline, there was a couple scenes. I was like, oh, okay. It was more bloody than I was expecting, but heads getting chopped off. And I was like, what? Okay. I guess we're going there. Yeah, I think the genre thing, that's interesting too, because like on your side of horror and I mean, that can go, I feel like that can go a wide range of
horror is tough, man.
Because it depends on what you're aiming for, right? You're either aiming for like this dreadful, I don't see it, but I know what's happening type of thing. I guess that's more for film, but even then, I think you can get that across in writing, and where it's just like, oh, this is pretty bad. I
hope I took your approach. I hope that the moments that I have my like action and violence, and it's a horror book, so there's some gore. I hope it's rooted in character. Yeah, I don't know if it always is.
I mean, a draft.
But I know it's rooted in dread.
Yeah.
But I do like it is like I do have these moments of creature feature, 80s horror movie, over the top silliness and gore. Yeah. It's something like as I'm going through my 5th edit now, I'll have to take a hard look at it.
I was gonna say the draft I had read of yours, and I'm not just being nice, but every scene I felt like there was an expectation of violence and or gore based on the scene. So like I'm thinking of like, and I don't think there was any real. The one when they're down in the subway tunnel and there's like the chase. Yeah. That was dreadful to me because I'm claustrophobic, and you did a good job of like describing that scene. That was more dread than violence and gore.
Yeah.
But I was expecting this to be dreadful because the scene you set up and the way you set it up, and then what was happening and which characters were in there. Then versus like, there's another scene later on where you got the lunch lady scene. I don't know if that's
Oh yeah.
Like that one, I was kind of expecting to be a little more what it was, it was like, okay,
I've rewritten that scene. Well, I had to, like, based on some of your really good feedback, speaking about writing action scenes, I had to completely reorient where the characters enter, where the lunch lady's facing, the logic behind what's happening.
Yeah.
At its core, it's still the same scene, but it's funny how many like different ways you can like set it up and have a very similar result. But yeah, okay. Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say that I do this thing, and I think it's based on, like, it's funny. I'm such like a split person. I don't like actual violence. I've said this before on the cast. Yeah. Like, I don't like serial killers. I don't like actual violence or gore or surgery. Any of that stuff kind of grosses me out.
Yeah, no, thank you.
But like, but in horror movie, like lingo and like filmic language and book language, like there's something to me that I find silly and kind of playful. Think back to like your Evil Dead 2s or like, Brain Dead by Peter Jackson. There's this like over the topness of gore where it becomes comic, almost like Buster Keaton-esque about like people slipping, and there's all these gags of ridiculousness. That's fun to me. And I definitely tried to incorporate that into my book at moments, just the ludicrousness of the situation. I have no idea if that's going to track to anybody else, but it tracks to me, and it made me giggle.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. Like the scenes I've written, I'm like in my head, I'm like, this is fun adventure espionage thriller kind of thing. I'm like, I don't know if that's going to translate. Are people going to get that? Like, oh, this is supposed to feel like a 1970s kind of espionage, quiet, scene, and then the action picks up. They can pick up on the violent level, like the violence levels. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully.
I feel like there's easy, like not easy, but stones are thrown often at authors and new authors who write with filmic language or trying to like recreate a movie. I unabashedly, unguiltily, like confidently am trying to create a movie.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I want it to be a book and a novel first, but I want to give somebody a popcorn eating, funny sitting down with your friends experience. Yeah. And that's okay to me. Like that's where I'm aiming. And I'm sure that's probably the wrong thing to say from an author's vantage point. But if I can provide a 10-hour enjoyable movie for somebody to like, that's perfect.
When you're writing a novel, you're still putting it into some type of motion and action in your head anyways, as you're writing these scenes. So, I mean,
yeah,
at the end of the day, it's kind of like a long movie, but.
And I've got tons of product placement in my movie or in my book. I've got
Coke cans everywhere.
Yeah. It's like Mountain Dew signs are flying around. Yeah, I want it to be like a big budget summer movie without any corporate involvement. That's my goal. Yeah. Like in its purest form. Like, we're not trying to sell toys here. We're not selling Coke cans.
And then the whole group is decapitated by a Mountain Dew billboard sign spinning from the heavens.
It's funny because I do have like products in my book, but it's more of a critique on consumerism than
blood spurted from their necks like a mountain of dew.
A mountain of dew. I think I have a soda fountain actually in there. I think I use that metaphor. I'll tell you, it's fun, man. Like, that's one thing I came across, is that getting to these scenes and trying to plan them out and writing them down and editing them even to make them feel more frenetic and more punchy and like just more immediate.
Yeah.
It's a really fun part of writing for me. I really enjoyed it.
And I think like next time when I go through for like the next, books or whatever, next scenes, just thinking of like, all right, coming into it, because I'm more of a planner, but like understanding where the space is, understanding where the characters are, understanding like kind of those pieces ahead of time. For me, I know will make it even more enjoyable to write. Because then going back and rereading it the first time, I'm like, I'm sure I'll still have that feeling, but I think
I'll tell you one thing that
it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I think the planning idea is like it's a great call, and I could stand to do a little more of that. One thing I tried hard not to do, and it's tough, right? Because I think we've grown up in a society where like action is supposed to be cool. Those who are good at fighting are supposed to look quote unquote cool when they do it.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. I didn't want to I read some kind of espionage thriller stuff where it's just this self-aggrandization of the main character and how awesome they are at doing all of the things.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. I kind of wanted the sloppiness I wanted it to feel a little more real.
Mm-hmm.
And not to glorify it and like violence is awesome. Like that wasn't my main, or like, yeah, I don't know. It's like all of the movies that came out in the wake of The Matrix and how they all had those kind of gun fu, isn't this awesome? I mean, John Wick is honestly similar in that vein. Like it's this kind of glorification of violence in a way. And I like the choreography and like the dancing of it. That this is what a man or woman is like kind of lame to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think those movies have kind of lost sight of what, I don't know. That's losing sight of the purpose of why the action should exist, right? Because that's another aspect to like writing action.
Because like, there somebody took his puppy.
Yes.
That's why it exists.
4 movies later, it's because someone took.
I mean, this probably goes to like, it probably goes back further, but I'll go as far as like, if we're talking about movies, The Raid. I feel like The Raid was super influential on Western cinema.
Yeah,
and it was violence for violence sake. There's no story really. It's just choreography for the sake of it.
Yeah,
it's when all these action directors became directors, and it's fun, it's great, but like there's no story.
Yeah.
And I don't think that translates to novel writing because you need, as we've discussed, story.
Yeah.
for anybody to invest that amount of time. Like if you want to go and not think for an hour and a half and watch Keanu Reeves shoot people, that's great.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could convince somebody to lay down for 10 hours and read my book and just have it and just have it be like, and then he shot a bunch of people. Like, I don't know. That's the type of movie I don't want to make, right? Or the book I don't want to make.
And you also need a purpose within the scene itself too. Like, why is this thing happening? You know, because like if there's another easy solvable reason for it, then you haven't given enough character push and/or things.
Did you read the book, The Driver? That was, that movie.
No.
It was based on a book.
No.
I'm curious how much, because I thought the movie was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I wonder if that comes across in the book, because the book could very well just be this like cool guy story.
What are you reading anything lately?
Yeah, nothing new. I'm still plugging away on the old stuff.
Yeah.
As far as watching, I watched the new Evil Dead.
I'd like to see that.
I won't spoil anything, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thumbs up. And it was an interesting mixture of like the 2013 remake, reboot equal, whatever it is, and Evil Dead 2, oddly enough. So the director, Lee Cronin, he's an Irish director, did a movie called Hole in the Ground. He did a great job. All the actors and actresses.
Yeah, I've heard some good things about it.
Awesome. Nice. Yeah, thumbs up. And then I just watched with Jill Something in the Dirt, super low budget, no budget sci-fi movie in like the vein of maybe Primer by was it Benson and Moorhead? That's kind of filmmaking duo who are known for these kind of very low budget sci-fi / horror movies, and now they're getting gobbled up by the system. They were responsible for a few episodes of Moon Knight too, I guess.
Oh, nice.
But they're great. They're super, super talented. They star in the movies in addition to writing and directing in them, and it's just like it was really, really refreshing to watch a ultra low budget movie shot in somebody's apartment.
And it was good.
And it was really good. So yeah, 2 big thumbs up there.
Nice.
How about you? What are you reading? What are you watching?
I really haven't been watching anything. I feel like this has been
really?
Yeah. Like
just reading.
I've just been reading a lot. I haven't gotten into, I've been watching Seinfeld. I've not been watching any new TV shows. I haven't gotten into anything. Like I'm just kind of like, meh. I don't know. There's just too much, and I'm just sick of all of it.
There's a lot of garbage out there.
There's so much, and then
I won't say garbage. It's like a lot of mediocre.
Yes,
there's a plethora of just okay content. Like I started The Power the other day, and it was like, what am I doing? Like, how much more time do I want to spend in this? Like, I'm 5 hours in.
Yeah.
Do I just cash out? Like,
yeah.
Do I save? Do I take that time and read
something?
Does it get better?
Yeah, because it feels like there's stuff that'll come out that's in the genre I like, and I watch it, and I'm like, yeah, I put 5 hours in. I'm like, am I going to finish this? But I can't.
It's all just okay. It's not
can't
terrible.
Just say I like
it's
it.
Tepid.
You know? Yeah, it's just like, meh, come on, boring.
I'll tell you, that's why That Something in the Dirt was so refreshing, right?
Yeah.
It was like 90 minutes. Obviously they cared about it. There's a bit of a soul to it. It's not like overly cerebral. Yeah. It's real. It felt like art. It felt like fun art.
Yeah, like there's a couple movies I do want to see. Like I want to see, Rise of the Dead. There, I want to see is it Beau is Beautiful, the Ari Aster movie with.
Oh yeah, yep.
Like that looks like fun. fun. Maybe. I don't think any of his movies can be described as being fun.
Yeah.
It looks interesting is what I should say. But yeah, nothing. I haven't watched anything. Reading wise, though, I actually, right behind you, I read All the Pretty Horses, Cormac McCarthy.
Oh, wow. You blew through that.
Yeah, I cranked through that one. I really enjoyed that book. It's got this kind of slow burn thing in the beginning, and then there's one point where it turns and picks up, and you're like, oh, okay, this is...
It totally changes right in the middle. Yeah.
I was like, I thought this would just be a book about horses, and it's like, oh no, there's a little more to it. I thought it was really great. And I just finished this book called The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. She did the Broken Earth trilogy.
Man, yep.
It's great. It's like a Lovecraftian urban fantasy monster book in the city, and it's pretty fascinating. It takes place in New York, and she does a really good job of. The city has its own life.
Is it contemporary? Like, what's the time frame?
Yeah, it's
oh, cool.
So, and it's pretty cool. I mean, it's not really spoilers, but the characters are going to kind of take on the personalities of the boroughs. So I guess if you're from New York and you know it really well, it kind of reflects that. But
oh, that's neat.
Yeah, it's a fun read. And I just finished.
I'll check that out later. I won't read it now because it'll probably discourage me from writing my city.
Yeah, no
monster.
I would say wait.
Did she play with? I know you'd mentioned before that as far as POV, she was playing around a lot with Broken Earth. Is this standard like?
Yeah, it's a little more standard read, third person stuff. It's not.
Is it limited third or is it like?
Yeah, limited
omniscient?
Third. It's limited third, but within like a chapter, sometimes it'll jump to like another character if there's multiple characters. But it's very clear separation, like scene break. So, I think she does first person 1 or 2 points, but that's very on purpose. Definitely not like Broken Earth where it's like second, third, first, and your brain's kind of hurting trying to keep up with it.
That was hard for me to get into. I'll try again.
It was really tough, but it's worth it. The payoff is worth it. And I just started like a high fantasy. I don't know if it's Game of Thronesy yet, but it's this older book. The author is Lois McMaster Bujold. She's been around forever, and she's written all sorts of like fantasy and sci-fi stuff. A friend of mine was like, oh, you should. She was like, check out these 2 books, her sci-fi stuff. But if you want to try some fantasy stuff, give this a whirl. She's like, I don't know if you'll like it because this isn't really your genre, but I'm kind of cranking through it right now, and I'm enjoying it. It's something a little bit different in the way it's written. I think that was a very action-y episode talking about. I don't know
if we had many tips. I guess like write short sentences if you want to. Use active words.
No, I think we have plenty of tips. I think
don't use the passive voice. I don't know.
Pay attention to spatial. Keeping track of that. Keep track where people are. Make sure the action's there for a purpose, for a reason.
Have fun. Yeah, make sure it's rooted in the character.
Yeah, make sure the violence, if you want to go violent, is what maybe the character would see and react to. So,
and like if you're writing inside that genre, it's what the reader is going to expect. Otherwise, it kind of feels like a slap in the face.
Yeah, you can't have a thriller and then turn it into like a horror movie. Or, you can't. I mean, maybe you could,
unless you really want to, I guess. But yeah,
the genre expectations won't fit there. So yeah, I think that's it. What are we doing?
Right.
What are we doing for the next episode here?
I think it's like another actiony thing, right? It's like
dialogue tags and action beats. We're gonna get into that.
I like that because man, that is a constant struggle. I look forward to chatting about that.
So that'll be our next episode. Join us. You can find us on Instagram, Writer Syndrome Books. You can find us on Twitter still. Writer _ Syndrome. We're there. We're still there. What am I talking about? And then go to our website, check out all the little episodes, writersyndrome.com. You can reach out to us. There's an email address on there if you have any topic ideas or if you want to come on and talk.
Yeah, I made Twitter a lot easier to take. I blocked Elon Musk.
Oh, that's what you have to do.
So now they don't give me any of his lame updates.
Yeah, now our account's gonna get deleted. We're gonna get fired from his company or fired from something because we blocked him.
Oh God.
But yeah, that'll be our next episode. So reach out. Until then, just keep right.